And now we are beginning with the multicelled organisms. The phylum Platyhelminthes or class Turbellaria. They are multicelled organisms. Platyhelminthes are bilaterally symmetrical animals, mainly free-living species occurring in fresh and salt waters, and more rarely in wet soils. They have elongate flat body. There are about 4,500 species which range from 1 mm to large freshwater forms more than 500 mm long. Unlike most other bilaterians, Platyhelminthes have no internal body cavity and are therefore described as acoelomates. They also lack specialized circulatory and respiratory organs. In traditional medicinal texts, platyhelminthes are divided into Turbellaria, which are mostly non-parasitic animals such as planarians, and three entirely parasitic groups, Cestoda, Trematoda, and Monogenea. However, since the Turbellarians have since been proven not to be monophyletic, this classification is now deprecated. Free-living flatworms are mostly predators and live in water or in shaded, humid terrestrial environments, especially in tropical areas, such as leaf litter. Cestodes, tapeworms, and trematode flukes have complex life cycles, with mature stages that live as parasites in the digestive systems of fish or land vertebrates, and intermediate stages that infest secondary hosts. The eggs of trematodes are excreted from their main hosts, whereas adult cestodes generate vast numbers of hermaphroditic segment-like proglutids that detach when mature are excreted and then release eggs. Unlike the other parasitic groups, the monogeneans are external parasites infesting aquatic animals, and their larvae metamorphose into the adult form after attaching to a suitable host. And let's see the planarians. They belong to class Turbellaria. Here you can see the important stuff you have to know for the exam. The eye spots. These are free-living creatures living in waters, mainly freshwater. It has ear-like structures on the head also, which are called sensory lobes or auricles. Also it has a nerve cord, a little gastrovascular cavity because it is not a parasite, it is a free-living organism which often hunts. And it has, for this purpose, pharynx, which the animals can project out of their body. They are catching the prey and it is contracted inside. It is for food collection or catching prey. And some representatives of this group of animals, some freshwater species, the Dugesia species, living in running waters, clean rivers and streams, often in the mountains. It is very interesting that planarians have a very good ability to regenerate. Even if you cut an animal in two equal parts, each part will regenerate and another animal will emerge. But it's interesting because sometimes it happens that the animal is not detached all in two halves, and you can observe also animals with two heads or two tail parts. In this short movie you can see the regeneration ability of planarians. These organisms have one of the best regenerative abilities in the animal world. Other species, Dendrocelium lacteum. Lacteum means milk because they are milky white. They are living also in clean waters, in streams, and they are indicators for clean waters. Another species, Planaria alpina. From the name, you can suppose that it's living in the high mountains, in the alpine areas. You can see the characteristic ears. There's not, of course, ears, as I said, they are sensory organs, tentacles. They are It's more correct to call them tentacles. And again, the species is living in the mountain streams and clean rivers, inhabiting the surface of the stones and rocks on the bottom of the water basin. Often you can find them under stones on the bottom of the rivers. And they're a group, ecological group of planarians which live in underground waters. They can be studied and collected in caves or in springs because sometimes strong waters after heavy rains or floods can flush out some individuals, and the scientists can collect them and study them. It's very interesting, specific for collecting planarias, that you cannot collect them in alcohol or other preserving, other well-known preserving liquids. There are special solutions for preserving planarians. And there are some terrestrial species which live mainly in the tropical areas or in areas where it is very wet. The atmosphere is very wet. The air has high humidity. Some are predators and some are invasive. This species, the hammerhead worm, is an example of this. It's native to Southeast Asia, but it's spread in some parts of the world like North America. And it is causing a lot of damage because one of its prey are the earthworms. And you know that the earthworms are essential for the soil fertility. So you can see that this invasive species hits the ecosystem from below. And it can collapse if there is no regulator of its quantities. Here you can see this predation of the hammerhead worm. And there are also marine species living in the seas and oceans of the world. They are one of the most colorful and beautiful animals on earth. Compared not to the butterflies, they are compared to the sea slugs. The sea slugs and the marine turbellarias are one of the most beautiful animals on earth. They can swim, some species can swim or crawl on the surface of the rocks or the corals of the ocean bottom. You can see such beautiful combinations of colors they have. Here you can see how a species is swimming. Class Trematoda, other group of the flatworms. It includes two groups of parasitic flatworms, not free-living like the previous ones, known as flukes. They are internal parasites of mollusks and vertebrates. Often mollusks are intermediate hosts. Most trematodes have a complex life cycle with at least two hosts. The primary host, where the flukes sexually reproduce, is a vertebrate. The intermediate host, in which asexual reproduction occurs, is usually a snail. Here is a scheme of a fluke. So you don't have to remember all the stuff here, but you have to know that there is an oral sucker structure with which the parasite attached to the host's tissues. Also, it has esophagus and a very simple intestine, very well developed reproductive system. It is important to know that all the parasites, it's characteristic for this ecological group of animals, because here we are not talking about taxonomy, we are talking about ecological group. Characteristic for parasites is that they have very good reproductive system and not well developed digestive and circulatory system, because they rely on the liquids and the food from the host, so they can absorb nutrients from all of the surface of their body. One species which is widely distributed parasite is the Fasciola hepatica. You can see here colored animal and light microscope photograph. And something about its life cycle. It invades mainly herbivores, as here, for example, it's the goat. It is invaded when it eats the cercarias, the so-called larvae. It's very roughly, of course, said. Cercarias are cercarias, and they become infected. It is when they are on pasture, mainly near wetlands. But you can see here inside the water basin, a pond, for example, there is a species of snail which is intermediate host from which the cercarias get out and climb on the hygrotrophic wetland vegetation. This species is mainly the snail species Galba truncatua. You have to remember this Latin name, Galba truncatua, because it is important, widely distributed, and problematic species for dispersal of the flukes of the Fasciola hepatica, causing the so-called fasciolosis. Of course, the snail is not guilty for this, just it's the nature. It is a transmitter of this disease caused by parasites on the goats. The eggs of Fasciola hepatica is going out from the scuds of the goat and falling into the wetlands, where you can see they enter as a form of miracidium. It is another stage of the development of the Fasciola hepatica called miracidium, going inside the Galba truncatua's body. Other species, Opisthorchis viverrini. It is called viverrini because it was found in the viveras. These are small carnivores, mainly distributed in the tropical areas. You know, the viveras, civetas, they are something between the polecats and mustelids and the cats. So when we talk about the pets, it is a bad parasite invading our dogs and cats. In occasion, it can invade and humans, but it's a rare case. They are rare cases. Its intermediate hosts are the cyprinid fish from the family Cyprinidae. For example, carps, crucian carps, and other. Class Monogenea. Monogenea are very small parasitic flatworms, mainly found on skin or gills of fish. They are rarely longer than about 2 centimeters, and even smaller. A few species infecting certain marine fish are larger, and marine forms are generally larger than those found on freshwater hosts. We will look about freshwater species. Monogeneans lack respiratory, skeletal, and circulatory systems and have no or weakly developed oral suckers. Monogenea attach to hosts using hooks, clamps, and a variety of other specialized structures. It's a very complex hook apparatus. They are often capable of dramatically elongating and shortening as they move. They can crawl. Polystoma species. This is a genus which is widely distributed and rich on species. There are suckers in the both parts and the both ends of the body of these parasites. At the front side, the sucker is very small and called oral sucker. It's situated near the mouth of the animal. But at the back of the animal, there is very complex structure of hooks and suckers, consisted of posterior sucker, opisthorchis, and anchor. you can see in the next slide, it's a light Gyrodactylus sp. This species has a complex structure again and have similar positioning of the hook apparatus. Gyrodactylus attack salmon, so they are freshwater species, and mainly the gills. You can see here which the hook apparatus is very complex, and a light microscopic picture of this hook apparatus. Here you can see invaded fish specimens by this parasite. Diplosome paradoxum, another parasite invading the gills of freshwater species. Why paradoxum? Because it's paradoxal. It is one animal consisted of two animals. They're attached to each other and connected when they're young and are for life, and copulating and reproducing this way. So remember this Diplosome paradoxum, the double animal. Here is one specimen, consisted of two specimens, attached to the gills of a fish, of a cyprian fish, in the upper photograph, and in the lower it's a group of double specimens. They are sucking blood, and if the fish is invaded a lot of this parasite, its breeding and circulation is going bad, and it can cause even disease and death of the fish. Class Cestoda, tapeworms, taenias. All cestodes are endoparasitic and their life histories vary, but typically they live in the digestive tract of vertebrates as adults and often in the bodies of other species of animals as juveniles. Over 1,000 species have been described, and all vertebrate species may be parasited by at least one species of tapeworm. The humans, we are the same, so almost every one of us in some part of their life had some tapeworms inside, and also ringworms. They are hermaphroditic animals. Some are very dangerous, some are not. Important is that the most complex is the head part, consisted of rostellum, hooks, and suckers which are surrounding its head structure. Again, its reproductive system is very well developed, and the digestive system and circulatory system is not well developed. Typical parasite. Taenia solium, a very large species, often met infecting domestic animals. These proglottids at the end of the body, as you saw from the previous lecture, are rich and are consisted of reproductive organs. So when they detach from the body, a new animal can emerge. It is dangerous parasite and can invade humans. When it's insisted, it can invade muscle tissue and brain and can be fatal for humans. Here is a cycle of this parasite invading pigs and humans. So be careful. You can be invaded by not well cooked invaded meat of domestic pigs. Also, of course, from boars, wild animals. Here is the life cycle of this parasite. other species, Taenia saginata. Also, Dithylobotrium latum, invading fish species, one of the longest parasites from this group. It is invading, as I said, fish species and having intermediate hosts as copepods. These are small crustacean, freshwater plankton, zooplankton species, copepods. One of the widely distributed species are from the genus Cyclops because they have one eye and they are named after these creatures from the Greek mythology. Here you can see invaded species, specimens. Ligula intestinalis, again, a taenia which invades the intestinal tract of fish species. Here, for example, it is shown that it's a cyprinid fish. It can invade birds, which are fish-eating birds. Secondary, it has two intermediate hosts. Primary hosts are again the Cyclops. Secondary hosts are fish species. And the final host, definite host, adult cestodes invade, you can see here, the gulls and other fish-eating species of birds.